Hope everybody's doing well. Thanks for joining us today. So let's go ahead and kick this off. Essentially, what we're going to go through is how Ahead views a comprehensive approach to IT asset management, and the tagline, that I always use with customers is how to manage that IT chaos. Um, so I'll introduce myself and then I'll pass it over to Justin. As uh, Caitlin said, I'm Chris Myers. I'm the manager of the Specialist Solutions Engineers for the ServiceNow team. I have 15 years of experience on the ServiceNow platform on the partner side as an implementer, advisor, and a consultant, and kind of partnered with Justin in his side of the house on this concept. Justin, I'll pass it over to you.
Yep. And my name is Justin Fromell. I'm the SVP of Digital Operations, Client Applications, also the founder of Hatch. And my background comes more from helping companies, dating way back to helping companies in the Silicon Valley, for example, help with complex asset and deployment type scenarios, and also leading to today with Hatch and its integration into ServiceNow and how we're helping lead the market forward in that direction.
Awesome. So just a quick primer on who Ahead is for those that don't know. We're a $4.1 billion revenue company, headquartered out of Chicago, Atlanta, the West Coast, and New York City. We have 2,700 employees, and why that number is important is that next line is about 2,000 engineers. So we are a technology-based, engineering-based firm that services our almost 4,000 plus clients around the United States and globally. We have 17 years in business, and a lot of the stuff you see on the right comes from the years of experience that we have deploying a lot of different technologies across the United States. If I go to the next slide, this really tells the story of our expertise, right? Everything that Ahead does is centered around our three principles, which is vision, transformation, and foundation. These three principles are key when it comes to really allowing allowing our customers to flourish as they implement technologies within their ecosystem. Additionally, if you look on the outside, you'll see the Hatch logo, and that's really or the Foundry logo, which is where the Hatch and ServiceNow kind of intersect. And that's really where we're going to focus today, is some of that automation and streamlining capabilities. So I'll turn it over to Justin now to get us moving on a story that we have in the space.
So let me kind of set the stage for what we're going to be talking about today. And this is a story of one company I specifically worked with, but this is a story that I've heard time and time again. And I think a story that would resonate with most people in the industry when you're doing anything at scale. So this is a story of a client that was out firsthand, and they were telling me about a situation they had. It was a big infrastructure upgrade. This was ultimately what happened is a bunch of infrastructure equipment had to be shipped into one of their data centers. That infrastructure equipment had some lead time issues. It took a while to get there. When it ultimately did get to that data center, it ended up, the pallets got pushed off to the side, and it sat basically in a dock for over 9 months. And for 9 months, equipment, well over a couple $1 million worth of equipment, sat and kind of got lost in the shuffle, because there's this handoff, and I think everyone can relate to this. There's this handoff between procurement and then IT operations. And what happens is this creates a bit of a blind spot where procurement is out sourcing the equipment for the job. And ultimately, at some point, IT operations has to pick up and take this. And because who knows what happens in the supply chain, the time it takes, where it ends up going, that this handoff can end up getting fumbled. And what we're really focused on, and what we're going to talk about today, is a process and some software integrations that can ultimately take, when I procure something, when I know something is coming inbound, that it's being updated in my IT asset management software in ServiceNow, that it's understood that there's an inbound ASN, that the CMDB records are being seeded and created at the moment it ships, that the tracking details, that the support contract details, that all of the information about those assets are seeding into the CMDB, into the IT asset management tables, and are there in a state of in transit. And then as soon as they arrive, that system is updated, that it's automatically set to in stock and available, and then that we're able to kick off and push any additional, open a ticket for deployment, whatever it takes. Because the entire idea here is large amounts of money are tied up in these big infrastructure plays. And what happens is every moment, every day that's lost, let's not even go all the way out to 9 months, is money lost. This is depreciating assets. This is equipment that was bought for a specific project, and you're not able to realize the value of that investment because missteps in this process. And when you look at this, this also comes down to the way we use IT asset management systems and ServiceNow and our CMDBs today. I cannot tell you how many people I talk to that are frustrated with the tools they have today. And my response and my kind of my view of this is, it's not the tool's fault. This isn't the fault of ServiceNow. This isn't the fault of your CMDB or ITAM. This is a fault of the diet and the information they're being fed. This is no different than I can have the best personal trainer, I can have the best gym routine, and I'm going to be upset if I'm not seeing results. But the reality is, if I'm feeding myself a diet at McDonald's every time I leave that gym, which I kind of do, that's ultimately going to lead to the fact that I'm not going to see the results that I'm expecting, and I'm not going to see the yield from that gym membership, the yield from that personal trainer that I would expect to see, because it's the diet's fault. It's not the routine's fault. And in that same sense, when I look at the challenges in managing how things get picked up in your CMDB, picked up in your ITAM tables, it comes down to, how does that information get there, right? Some of the challenges we see people struggle with today: what is the lead time? Where is it? What's the status of the order? Did it even ship? Where is it in process in that shipment? What is the status if there's a larger project at play that's going to have service coordination to go with it? What is the support and maintenance and all the other details that come along with that? And then how do I actually track the net book value and the depreciation of that item to drive into my financial reporting? How is that coming along with that? All right. So when I look at current state, when I look at how things are done today, procurement cuts a PO. Then there's a shipment and a delivery, comes from wherever equipment is coming from. And then ultimately what happens is there has to either be a manual import of that data, or it gets picked up because ServiceNow Discovery was run, or maybe there's a third-party tool that's picking it up and dropping it into the CMDB. But again, that's also another type of discovery. Ultimately, the problem is, unless the equipment has actually been brought online, these steps, for the most part, aren't identifying or covering it. And that's where you get this blind spot. That's where you get this, hey, look, I paid for it, but I haven't actually recognized any value, and I don't actually have it in my operational tools yet. Ideal state, the PO is cut, automatically ServiceNow is updated. PO details, the order details are pushed into ServiceNow. The shipment and delivery happens, ServiceNow is updated. It's in transit. Here's the details. Here's the tracking information. Here's the support contracts. Here's anything else that needs to be understood about that incoming asset, already seeded into the system, right? Later, Discovery will pick that up again. Discovery can build on that existing record. Discovery can add to that existing CMDB entry. But the key is that the object itself has been seeded far earlier in the process than you'll typically see. And that single differentiating bit there makes a huge difference in the quality of data and the processes that exist today and the outcomes that you're going to see. So one of the things I want to kind of talk about before we get into this ServiceNow connector itself is, behind this, when you work with HEAD, there's a system called Hatch that we have. Hatch is an IT asset information, IT asset kind of, the idea here is Hatch is pulling all the information about assets directly from places like the manufacturers, the distributors, everything upstream. It's taking that information, it's aggregating it, okay? So this becomes your IT asset intelligence tool. And your intelligence tool is then able to take this, which today a lot of times is managed through logging into individual portals of a major OEM, of spreadsheets that are incoming, of emails that you're trying to take. And you're trying to take all this information, you're ultimately trying to get it into ServiceNow. You're trying to use this to inform your operations. So the key is with this IT intelligence platform that is Hatch, we're taking and aggregating all that information and making it available. Then the intent is to be able to make that information and push it down into other systems, such as ServiceNow, into APIs, into other reporting layers. Our software is not intended to be an IT asset management system. It's not intended to be a CMDB. It's intended to instead be an aggregation of information from all these disparate sources, because we've made the investments into integrations. We've made the investments into the upstream systems that feed this to help bring that information in and then make that information actionable. So what I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to go through a very brief demo of Hatch to show kind of the information that we're talking about. And then Chris is going to pick it up and he's going to talk about now, as that gets handed into ServiceNow, what does that do and what does that look like? So, 1 second here. All right. So Hatch covers 3 core areas. And these 3 core areas, such as program management, which is everything about project management, the sites that it's shipped to, details about the bill of materials and everything like that. You have another area, which is procurement. This is the order, the logistics, the inventory, the activity. And then you get down to the asset information. And this is the support contracts and all the information that comes with it. These 3 areas all are covered by different points in which how that information is going to flow into ServiceNow. So walking through this, one of the things we do is we start off and we make sure all the activity that you have with the head is added and attributed to a dimension and a context, and that dimension and context will flow forth into your own system. So here I can see for a given project, all of my orders and the details and the statuses. I can see all of my assets that are part of this project. And then I can see all of the shipments that are part of this project as well. Accordingly, sites, and this is really important, we'll register and set up every site that we're deploying to for you. And these map critically to a stockroom in ServiceNow. So what I can see, and what this really helps, is this data center corresponds to this location and stockroom in ServiceNow. And here, what we're doing is collecting and attributing all of the order activity. What is going on, what is shipping, what has gone to the site, what are all the assets and the asset details that need to be pushed to this stockroom record in ServiceNow that will show you. What are all the shipments and logistics details that come along with that, as well as all of the entitlements and support contracts that go with that as well. So I can see here at this site, again, site, stockroom, same kind of records. I can see what's upcoming for renewal, what that coverage data is. Then if I go down and we take another step and we look at the procurement side of things, now I can see all my order information. This is where it pulls in. Here I have a order, it's in procurement. I can see that this is for a given project. I can see that it's going for this data center. I can drill in, I can see more of these details. I can understand what the status is. But what's critical is that at the time this order was placed, at the time the PO came in, that is also being seeded in ServiceNow. And we're going to show you how this data that I'm showing you also is surfaced there. Here I can even see details that go further in, such as this is a Dell build to configure to order situation. I can even see the contract manufacturer, the estimated delivery dates, all of this upstream information. Again, this comes with the benefits we have of all the API integrations we have into the ecosystem of partners, manufacturers in the IT space. Ultimately, once an order ships, we see details of all of the logistics information. We can see we have live tracking integrations into over 1,200 different carriers. And the cool thing is that benefit flows down. So we can see real time, where is a shipment, what's the status. We can see if there's shipment exceptions. We can understand if something's gone wrong. We can automatically open tickets if something's damaged, late, stuck in customs, doesn't matter. And what's really cool is once it's actually been delivered, we're getting a signal from those carriers. We know it's been delivered. we can update the status. So what we'll do is we'll initially see the status in ServiceNow within transit, and then as soon as it's delivered, we'll mark it as in stock. So we're watching and observing the shipments so we can update the details on your end in your system to update that status as soon as it's actually arrived and hit that dock or hit that location or facility. Our system gets rather extensive, has a bunch of analytics details, performance, ticket tracking, exception tracking, all of that kind of gives you a nice high level view of how that process works. And then we get into inventory tracking as well. Ahead does have specialized programs in which we can hold inventory at various parts of the country for you, various parts of the globe, and have that inventory available and ready to ship. And I'm going to jump over now to the assets pool. So here's where we see the asset information. These records here are going to correspond one-to-one to asset records that are created in ServiceNow in the ITAM. What I can see is on a given record, if a asset is going through one of Ahead's many integration centers, there might be additional configuration that's being done. All that configuration data is being pushed over into the CMDB before launch. I can also see, and it will be sent with it, we get direct from the manufacturers what are the support and maintenance contracts. So we can understand there is a SmartNet Total Care contract that's associated with this asset. What's the coverage? When's the expiration date? Not only is it available here, but pushed right into your system. This will go further and it'll pull in things like lifecycle milestones. And those lifecycle milestones, again, are things that are available. So we can track end of support, we can track end of sale. Those dates, that's information we're getting direct from the manufacturer. There's some of that information already available in packages such as Ham Pro. We can just help enrich and give further information to push that in and allow you to manage that in one centralized place in ServiceNow. Accordingly, we have, you can see integrations across a bunch of different manufacturers that are in our ecosystem. And we can see how all this information aggregates together to understand how we can see all of that support and maintenance, all of that contract tracking, all in one nice singular place. Now, what I'm going to do here, besides pointing out the fact that the integration is hosted right there, the fact that it's right there on the ServiceNow App Store, which Chris will show in a second. And what I'm going to do is hand over the conversation now to Chris to talk more about what that looks like on the ServiceNow end, now that you have an understanding of what that looks like from Ahead's tool set as part of that handoff.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. So I want to start this conversation by talking about concepts. If anybody on the call has ever been in a meeting with me, the first thing that I talk about is let's learn about some of the reasons behind the technology to further understand why it's important and why the operating model behind everything is important. So the first thing is you always want to optimize your TCO, right? By managing, as Justin said, the procurement, the maintenance, and all the disposal costs that come along with asset management. This is really hard for a lot of our customers to wrap their heads around and even get under control within their organization. And that's customers small, customers, large, right? It doesn't matter. It's a challenge that I see across all of our customer base. Additionally, we talk about the effectiveness and efficiency of IT when it comes to IT personnel performance. It's the same way when it comes to managing asset management and managing the asset lifecycle. Additionally, you all have compliance frameworks that you have to deal with. And it's really important that you understand those and from a back and forth to make sure that you're adhering to all the standards that are put in place from you. So what we see as the problem behind this and why this integration and these tool sets work together and even having the life cycle in place is really trying to solve those problems you see on your screen. Now, I'm not going to go into all of these. Justin's talked about some of these, but the most important one that we see is where's my asset, right? We see that a lot. We see that folks can't control their assets via any kind of standardized life cycle. And that's why it's really important that we understand from the time it's an idea that we need to purchase an asset within an organization, the time it's end of life, that we understand where it's at, where it is in the life cycle, and really the components behind it. Now, I'm sure everybody's seen a slide like this, especially if you've attempted asset management. HAM, or just the basic asset management foundations that's in ServiceNow. But it involves a bunch of different components, right? It's not just asset management. It's not just the CMDB, and it's not just one specific module or one specific tool set that we really have to understand when it comes to life cycle. You'll see strategic portfolio management from an ideation. A lot of the assets that come within your organization start with projects, right? They start with the ideas, they start with the demands, they start with the projects that eventually then go into procurement. We've decided we're going to do something. We start executing across that plan. Now we need to purchase to keep executing. And then that's where asset management really starts to come in. And this is where I talk about an integrated life cycle between the CMDB and between asset management as a concept, because they're intertwined, right? They not only do they have a one-to-one relationship between assets and CIs, they also have an integrated life cycle, right? Asset management is kind of that life cycle before we get into a production or a use type of scenario. And then the disposal is the asset management life cycle as well. So they're very integrated when it comes to CMDB and asset management as a concept. From an asset management perspective, if I take that slide and kind of boil it down to something that I would say is a little bit more of a easier to digest, it's planning, it's procurement, it's deployment, it's management, it's retiring, right? Everybody goes through these cycles of the life cycle, no matter what the asset is. That could be an end user device. It could be something sitting in a data center, and ultimately something that, we have to manage. So the way that I see asset lifecycle management is really identifying a plan for usage, identifying the plan to be able to monitor it when it's being in use within your environment, and then understanding when it's end of life and it's time for those refresh initiatives, and it's time to remove from a removal and a disposal perspective. Additionally, this is how we can really maintain from a security and compliance perspective this life cycle and controlling this life cycle. And I'm going to talk about what's called the IT points of control, and understanding these pieces to be able to prove out that we have a solid, mature life cycle. Now, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the ServiceNow tool, and I'm going to show you how Hatch and ServiceNow are integrated together and what is the value behind a lot of those pieces. So if we switch over here, let me just double check. Okay, you can see everything. So when we talk about ServiceNow, you'll notice that a lot of these pieces you see here on your screen are related to Hatch, and it is a service graph connector, as that little piece just flashed up on the screen. You'll have your map, as Justin just showed here, where you can drill in and see from a locations perspective where things are. Now, this one's going to be very specific to the United States, and we're able to see how many assets we have. If we click into it, we're able to drill down even more. Additionally, we can get into it from a cities and locations perspective. If I look to the right, we talk about our Hatch orders. We can see what's been delivered, what's not been delivered, as well as get into the minute details. So you can create these dashboards. You can put those out there for people to digest. Additionally, if I talk about our let's just say our sites. So Justin talked about being able to put our sites into ServiceNow or from the Hatch and have them relate to ServiceNow. We can have that as a stockroom within ServiceNow. If I scroll down, we can see the pieces that have the configuration item, have the assets, and everything in between, right? This is extremely important because it allows us to have the Hatch interface, feed data into ServiceNow, and relate all the pieces together. So it's a no-touch type of scenario. If you're not a HAM Pro user, this is very difficult for you, right? Because it's all manual. HAM Pro does this in a little bit of an automated fashion. I'll talk about that here in a second. But the idea that we can create this link between Hatch and ServiceNow and have our sites, have kind of a one single view and a gateway into everything is really important. Additionally, if I look at, we talked about the life cycle a little bit earlier, and I'm going to go ahead and look at a purchase order. So come back to me, please. So if we go to our purchase orders, we can look at, our purchase order views, and we can see all the purchase orders that are within so that have been sent into ServiceNow from Hatch. And this is powerful because it allows us to have a one-stop shop for everything that, we talked about, advanced ship notices and purchase orders and all those pieces. And we can even drill in. And if I search for a purchase order, you can see at any time, you can see where it's been shipped to. You can see some of the details around it. Additionally, you can see, the status, which is important in the total cost. This can all do roll-up reporting, and it allows us to see this purchase order throughout the life cycle. Additionally, if we go to another purchase order that says received, and I'll show you what that looks like from a maturity perspective as we go down the life cycle. This one has been delivered. So this is going to give us more information about it, including, our purchase order line items. So we can have each line item within ServiceNow from a cost perspective and put all of this into the tool, allow us to then see what assets have been created. Justin talked about the shell asset based on order status. This also allows us to see it in a life cycle and really push that automated life cycle with Ham Pro and enrich the pieces that come from Ham Pro, right? And then our receiving slips, right? These are just as important as any others within ServiceNow. So if I kind of shift gears to, this is great that you have the purchase orders, but let's look at what an asset looks like within ServiceNow. We can do that as well. So if I click on and I go to my assets here, and I'm just going to go to I'll go Hatch. I can't type, of course, but if we go to the assets and I look for this specific asset, the information that we can send within Hatch, and Justin talked about the one-to-one relationship between the data that's in Hatch and the data that's in ServiceNow. You're able to see, this one's on order. And why this is important, because I just showed you the purchase order details. Well, if I look through this, you can see the cost. You can see on order, you can see where it's going to be shipped to. You can see the support contracts that are associated with that from a purchases perspective. And it allows us to kind of have that holistic view into our assets, right? And allow us to really utilize the data that's in Hatch, utilize the data that we get from the Ham Pro or even the asset management implementations that we all have, and enrich the data using both tools. And then finally, what I want to show in ServiceNow is really this last piece is what it looks like from an asset that's in stock, right? One that has already been delivered to the loading docks that we all have. We can see, from a general perspective, what stock room it now lives in, where the location, is it available? Is it available to be deployed to the organization, or is there a certain status that is there? Additionally, from a financial perspective, we have the cost. That's just as important as anything. And then again, the contracts, right? And we can have all of our service contracts be loaded because of the data that we have in Hatch, the data we have in ServiceNow, and have that entire enrichment. And so, when we talk about, the ServiceNow service graph connector that we've built with Hatch, it's really to get this data and enrich this data from a holistic view to allow us to have a single source of truth. Right? You hear that a lot with the CMDB. It's the same thing with asset management, right? We want this data to be trusted. And the easiest way to get data trusted within an organization is to have an automated life cycle, right? So if I come back to my slide deck, and I will take any questions off of that, it's all about IT asset control, right? So all of the things that I've showed you kind of center around why we establish the life cycle, and then the points of control that go around that life cycle, right? From the service requests that are in the service catalog, the purchase orders and the contracts I showed you, the advanced ship notices Justin talked about, and even the receiving registrations. I showed that receiving slip. This data really helps us automate, right? And allows us to understand where an asset has been entered into our organization. Additionally, once it goes live, right, or in production, or a laptop is handed to a new hire or someone within the organization, that's where an operational points of control come in, right? And that's where we have showed the stock rooms and the entitlements. If you got software asset management, that will come in as well. And then model management. I'm going to talk about model management a little bit because I think that's a very important piece of this as well, right? Standardizing on models and understanding from a compliance and security perspective, as well as a cost control perspective, what kind of hardware models live within our asset management environment. And then obviously the outbound points of control, the disposal requests. I was on site with a customer a month ago, and they were really struggling with being able to do refresh initiatives. Well, the end of life components and the pieces within Hatch, and having that data in ServiceNow and having that all automated together in those dashboards allows us to be able to understand when refresh initiatives come and get ahead of that so that we can plan for it, right? And there's no a surprise cost to the business, which ultimately at the end of the day what the life cycle is really meant to control. And then again, the stockroom pieces. So model management, as I talked about that, this is what a typical model management kind of best practice looks like. If I add Hatch into that from a procurement systems, and we probably should add the Hatch logo to the top of that as well. We now have a holistic, I guess, automated way to populate and standardize upon models, right? No longer can someone request a model that is not part of your standardization. No longer do we need to write, 3 months worth of reports for auditors because we have a policy in place, because we have these tools in place, because we have the automation in place. We can create the one-stop shop inside the product model table in ServiceNow, whether that's asset management foundations, HAM Pro, and enrich it with the Hatch information to really create a holistic model, let's just say a repository that is also connected to industry standards from a content library perspective. And so, this is a very key concept when we talk about Hatch. We talk about HAM Pro, we talk about the Better Together story. It's really creating confidence. It's really creating that holistic story between, the compliance and the operating procedures that we have, and then how the business actually works. A little earlier, I talked about Lifecycle holistically, and this is kind of a depiction of, where asset management begins, where configuration management begins, where configuration management ends, and where asset management begins, right? And we talked about strategic portfolio management. We talked about how that ideation and that demand kind of flow in from the requirement piece and even the request piece. This can also be without strategic portfolio management. Someone needs something for a data center, right? You can see the approval. I mean, a lot of this stuff on the top of the asset screen you guys have in your workflows within the service catalog with your hardware intake requests. Everybody has those. If you're using HAM Pro today, I know you have this because it's one of the things that are out of box. And it allows us to then, from this receive and this procure perspective, that's really where Hatch can supply and enrich more information to that part of the life cycle, that as we start to go down these pieces from deploy or even redeploy, we have everything we need. We're not relying on the human element to ensure that the operational life cycle has everything they need to really be a single source of truth, right? And the one thing that from a CMDB perspective, that's the one thing we strive for. It's the same thing with asset management. And so this is a really key concept to making sure that we have that single source of truth. We have that gateway to the business through ServiceNow, through the asset management database, through the CMDB, and those types of pieces. Additionally, when we talk about our asset lifecycle solution, we talked about Hatch. I want to talk about the four pieces, because Hatch, and I'll talk about how HAM Pro kind of is again the gateway to all of this. It's program management, it's product management, it's IT asset and lifecycle management, and it's the integrations that go along with it, right? And that's really where we're trying to get to when we talk about asset lifecycle as a concept, is putting these four pillars in place so they're all working together, right? They're all kind of working in an intelligent fashion, as Justin talked about in one of the earlier slides, because we want to remove the human element, right? A lot of times, a lot of these pieces get they get stale data, they get duplication, they get kind of set by the wayside and really not paid attention to. And that's where the asset chaos comes in, right? I talked about managing IT asset chaos, and it's a lot of things that we see when we dig in is these four pillars are not being, followed or even managed throughout that whole life cycle. And really, Hatch is allowing us to remove the remaining human element out of these pieces, and allowing us to get into a fully automated, intelligent lifecycle management solution. So what is the difference? And I get this all the time. What's the difference between the Hatch and ServiceNow integration? Where does Hatch begin? The answer is there's no real place where ServiceNow and Hatch kind of hand things off to each other. It's about enrichment, right? When we talk about Hatch, we're talking about plan, acquire, receive, and inventory. ServiceNow does inventory too, so that's one of the places where it's kind of that area where it comes together. And then when we talk about ServiceNow, it's that deploy, maintain, retire, and end of life, and allowing that holistic picture to really be put into place so that you can avoid loss of inventory. I hear this all the time. I have many customers who have said, I bought laptops and they were turned on in a office 1,000 miles away from headquarters, and we had no idea they were there, right? That's still a loss of inventory. It's something that we can now control with this holistic integration lifecycle. Additionally, the asset shipping status, right? That's the logistics part of the lifecycle. I see people struggle with this all the time. It's probably the number one thing that, I would say is a blind spot for a lot of my customers when it comes to creating, an automated life cycle within ServiceNow. And now with Hatch, we can supplement and enrich that logistics information in ServiceNow. And then again, just enrichment. I'm going to say that probably 3 or 4 more times before the end of this slideshow. Enrichment. We can never have enough data that is trusted, and we can never have enough information about our assets that allow us to make decisions, right? We talked about intelligent, asset management in general, and allowing asset management to live as an organism within IT. I call the seam to be the central artery of IT. And if I think about it, if the seam to be is the central artery, then asset management's the heart, right, of IT. So that's really where we want to make sure it's enriched. We want to make sure it's healthy. We want to make sure it's trusted. And then as we go forth, it's support contracts, end of life, warranty, all of the pieces that people struggle with when it comes to maintenance. Those are so important to have. And there's very little customers of mine out there and clients of mine out there that have implemented some type of asset management or asset lifecycle solution that can confidently say that they've controlled the support contracts, or that they know where their support contracts are from a ease of finding, right? Everybody has a contract management system that maybe 3 or 4 people in the whole organization have access to. So it takes time to get information, right? But it's about automating that support contracts into the hardware asset management perspective. And then this just kind of goes into, what to expect from the integration, right? Location tracking and holistic trusted location tracking, a hardware snapshot that you can confidently say, this is what we have. This is how much our TCO is. This is where we're at. Additionally, automating that asset inventory. You can never have enough automation when it comes to ensuring that you have a single source of truth. And then, I'm going to kind of go back to the life cycle contract dates, understanding end of life, understanding when something's in warranty, understanding when something is coming out of warranty. Those are so important to the holistic view. And then, if I think about, why the Hatch ServiceNow integration, it's up-to-date inventory knowledge, right? That is so key, that so many people struggle with. Tracking asset inventory upon the dispatch, as Justin said, this is something especially with advanced ship notices, that a lot of our customers struggle with. And then life cycle control of new configuration items, ensuring that once it's procured and once it's been approved, that we have a shell in the CMDB, in the asset management database, and have confidence that the shell information that we have from an on-order perspective or a in-transit perspective is correct, right? Because we're feeding data via a controlled, trusted solution like Hatch. And these are some key concepts that we really tried to instill with this integration to ensure that, as you're going down your ServiceNow asset management journey, as you're going down your asset management lifecycle journey as an organization, you have these pieces to ensure the success. So this is just a quick look of, how Hatch, interacting with Hatch to the shipped, the serial numbers and asset information. Then we do a scheduled import into ServiceNow, again, using the ETL. And I'm getting a little technical here, so I'm hoping I have some of my architects on the call. But the integration piece and using that IRE that exists within ServiceNow that allows us to populate and enrich the data that's within the purchase order tables and the asset tables and the stockroom tables in ServiceNow really allow us to create a holistic solution, right? And this is a very, very high level reference architecture for how the integration works holistically. But you can see the flow of data, and you can see that a lot of these pieces on the left side, these are either manual imports, or we're getting them from 8 different, 10 different, 15 different, 20 different integrations. Hatch can be your center of that, right? And Hatch can create a very easily maintained automated lifecycle and logistics population method for the asset management database, which I think is something that a lot of people struggle with because they have integrations with all the different vendors, right? They have all the different pieces they can, and even some integrations that we have that some of our customers can't, right? And so this allows us to really be that aggregator, as Justin said, to allow us to really create that single source of truth within the ServiceNow HAM professional suite or asset management foundational database. And again, I can't stress this enough. HAM Pro is not a replacement for, or I'm sorry, Hatch is not a replacement for HAM Pro. It is an enrichment for HAM Pro. We want to increase the automation of that life cycle using the HAM Pro plus Hatch story. There is no replacement. I know some people might see some overlap, but the way we are looking at this is it's an enrichment for the HAM Pro solution that a lot of our customers have in place. Now, some of you may not be at HAM Pro yet. I highly recommend you get there. It's great from an automation perspective. But again, it's optimizing your inventory and normalizing your hardware data, right? HAM Pro does the normalization. We can optimize that by using the Hatch. We can do flexible asset requesting and lifecycle tracking. ServiceNow providing a lot of that flexible asset requesting, the lifecycle tracking. We can get a lot of that data enriched from Hatch into ServiceNow to kind of create that holistic automation. And then again, the financial and lifecycle dashboards. I quickly showed you a dashboard in ServiceNow, and Justin showed you a lot of the data that's in Hatch. We can create dashboard visuals for every level of your organization to ensure that you can manage the life cycle, even if it's in an automated fashion. And I think this is a very key piece that a lot of our customers that are using this HAM and Hatch better together story, they're using it to success, right? It's these three pieces. And then finally, if you take anything out of this, right, the one thing I want, every one of my customers to come out of any talk track that I do on this is where an integrated Hatch and ServiceNow solution can help the most. It's purchase dates, it's model management, it's warranty information, it's the logistics, it's the ability to ensure that there's checks and balances between data that's in a tool to create a single source of truth, right? That's really why we created this solution and why it's our comprehensive approach to IT and really how we're helping our customers manage that IT asset chaos. So that's all I had from a slide perspective. Justin, is there anything you wanted to chime in on before we opened it up? But other than that, we can open up for some questions.
Let's open up for questions.
Perfect.
Awesome. It looks like we got a few here. So we'll start with the first one from Bill in the chat. But how mature does your CMDB need to be to benefit from this?
It's a great question. And it really, I think that a lot of people get lost in, well, I have dependencies and prereqs that need to be done. And the thing that I will say is Hatch is a maturity improvement perspective, or I should say a tool. So with that, I would say, if your CMDB is not in a single source of truth, that's okay, because it really means you're still in inventory management. But let's figure out a way that Hatch and the data that's in Hatch can get you to that single source of truth, can then help you with the asset management pieces as well. But there is no prerequisite that says that, we have to have a single source of truth, trusted data. The CMDB does have to be healthy, but it will figure out what healthy means for your organization to ensure that you have success with this, right? It's not a very black and white type of scenario like I know that could be out there. Cool. If you can't tell, I get that question all of the time.
You were ready for that one.
Yep.
Two of them are around costs, but is there a subscription cost for Hatch, and then the ServiceNow connector having a cost as well?
So Hatch has no subscription costs. We're not charging by user. What it is Hatch is part of the Ahead experience. When you buy from, when you partner with, when you procure through Ahead, when we manage your enterprise agreement or your SmartNet contracts, those are the components that come into play in which Hatch is part of, kind of inseparable from the Ahead experience. So from that vantage point, we encourage as many users as possible. We encourage the adoption of using the APIs and the integrations. The ServiceNow connector is available in the ServiceNow App Store. It itself does not have a cost. But What we do is we have a service in which we'll help set up that connector, we'll help establish the mappings between sites and stock rooms, and we'll help get you off and running right from the get-go. And that's a service that we do recommend to go with it, because that includes everything you need to take it, be up and running, be functional, not just download the app. We do the configuration for you. And then additionally, we can help you extend additional automations and do any additional customization based on your instance and the changes you might have already made.
Yeah, you may have just recently commented on this, but does Hatch have native integrations to automated order management systems?
To automated order management systems, I'm guessing what they're asking about is procurement systems like Ariba and Coupa. And yes, we do integrate into procurement systems. We can work on the front end. So the order comes in, we support both a catalog model or a push to cart model. And then what we typically do there is that'll be the ingest, and then ServiceNow to the IT team. That's kind of the push out after the process. So it comes in through procurement, keep procurement up to date, do what we need to do, procure, push out to ServiceNow, keep ServiceNow and the IT team up to date on the back end.
And I think that I just want to reiterate, like Hatch is our aggregator, right? It's a way for us to minimize the integrations into ServiceNow to really create that single source of truth. So
Great. Yeah, I just got one more question too. Does this require HAM or SAM Pro?
it does not, and I've tried to kind of. Let me say this. I know I put that slide up about HAM Pro and Hatch kind of being better together. The story is about creating an automated life cycle that does not require HAM Pro. It would be it would enrich your automated asset life cycle if we had HAM Pro, SAM Pro, and Hatch kind of all melted together. A lot of our customers are using it to enrich the asset management database. If you have the foundations that come with the ITSM suite, a lot of the concepts that I talked about, they're centered around the HAM Pro basics that we've kind of built some of the Hatch integrations off of, but you can still do this with the asset management foundational database as well. It just, you won't have a lot of the HAM Pro features that kind of make that story have that pizzazz that you want when it comes to asset management maturity.
Cool. I think that is all that I have in here, but double checking both the chat and Q&A. There was a question on whether or not it will be recorded. It is recorded. We'll make sure we send out the on-demand link and follow up for you. But yeah, I think that's all the questions I have in here. I don't know if you guys have any parting words, but if not, I can just close this out.
Well, Chris, how does someone get more information?
So the ServiceNow Hatch integration is in the ServiceNow store for all of you Hatch users that have ServiceNow. That is one way. Additionally, you can reach out to anyone on the intelligent operations team or the founder team that you have contact with, or your core client director or any specialist from a head perspective. We also have some white papers on our website and one-pagers. So there's a wealth of information out there. We can dig in deeper. We can do more intense demos, all of those types of pieces. Please let us know. But any ahead representative, I mean, this is really key to our success this year. So feel free to reach out to us, visit our website, or visit the ServiceNow store.
Yeah, and in the follow-up email, we'll also include a direct link to the ServiceNow store too, so it's an easy access point for you. But yeah, I can close things out here. Just as a reminder, it was recorded. We'll send it out in the follow-up emails. And then just thank you so much for joining live today. We'll be sending out Uber Eats gift cards within the next 24 hours to the email that you registered with. So keep an eye out for that. And then we will have a part 3 of this series launching on May 14th. It's a Hatch by Dell integration. So if you're curious about that, feel free to look out for email communications regarding registration for that session. And then just thank you again to our session sponsor, ServiceNow, and thank you to all of you for joining. We know you have busy schedules, and we thank you for taking time out of your day to attend. So enjoy the rest of your day and afternoon, and we'll see you for the next webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you.